following is a project of our nonprofit newsroom. Support Midcoast Morning and local community-centered journalism today by signing up to be a monthly sustaining donor at chly.ca/donate. It doesn't take much money to support local news.
Hello and welcome to Midcoast Morning. Filling in for Joe Pugh, I'm Jack Corfield. The 14th Nanaimo Fringe Festival will be taking place at the Port Theatre, the Black Rabbit, and for the first time ever on Gabriola Island, from August 8th to the 18th. Today, we'll get a behind-the-scenes look at what it takes to make this Fringe Festival happen from our guest, Tamara McCarthy. Then, after the break, we'll talk to one of the artists performing this year, Miss Divinity Rising. Welcome, Tamara. You are the artistic producer for the Nanaimo Fringe Festival and Pacific Coast Stage Productions. You're also a prolific director, producer, actor, and educator. And I'm so glad to have you on the show today. Is there anything else that you think people should know about you?
Well, I think you summed it up really nicely. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah, I've been working in theater for about 30 years, so it's been a lifelong love, sweat and journey.
Yeah, I'm just curious, what kind of started your journey into this theater lifestyle?
Yeah, I actually saw my brother, I think, in a high school play. He's 5 years older than me, and I was like, that's what I want to do. So from that point forward, I ended up, the classic story of having an amazing drama teacher in high school, and then I went directly into university at SFU to study theater. Couldn't really afford to go to university in my family, but I received an entrance scholarship, so I went directly from high school because they gave me at least the first couple years were covered. So it was a direct path into theater, and I did my bachelor's in theater and ran a theater company after that for 5 years and have been pretty much freelancing since the early 2000s.
And can you tell us a bit about why you think it's so important to create the space like Fringe Festival in Nanaimo?
There aren't a lot of places for people to put up their art. Obviously, it's very expensive. We live in a very expensive place as it is. And then there's a lot of barriers to being able to find space and find the resources and find the people who can help you put the show together, because of course you need performers and writers and designers and all kinds of folks to get your show up. So the Fringe really provides a space for folks who might not have other avenues to do their work. We are uncensored and lottery based, so you get drawn out of a hat. And it's not a curated festival where I decide that your work deserves to be in my festival. Fringe festivals under the umbrella of CAF, which is Canadian Association of Fringe Festivals, have some guiding principles, and it's unjuried and lottery-based. And so if you get drawn out of the hat, you get a spot in the festival. And that's kind of the basic premise of it. We have such a wide, diverse group of artists that are in the festival, lots of local folks, Vancouver Island, stretching from Victoria up to Port Alberni and Comox. And then we have a few folks from Vancouver this year and sort of Regina, Toronto, I think. We're all Canadian shows this year. We often have a couple from the States, but they just didn't get pulled out in the luck of the draw. So.
And can you tell me what distinguishes a diverse and inclusive theater performance in something like, particularly in comparison to Nanaimo, for example, compared to other Fringe festivals in other cities?
So we're a great spot for the touring artists and a really great launching pad for locals who maybe it's their first play. We often get a lot of Nanaimo and sort of central Vancouver Island folks who are putting up one of their first works or their first works coming out of university, or someone who's been living here for 40 years and finally decides, they want to try their play out. So we really provide platforms for folks that don't just have these opportunities everywhere. We try to reduce the barriers in that way. We also have sponsorships. So each year we provide sponsorship to an Indigenous artist. And this year it's actually to a group of Indigenous artists from Qualicum. And so what we do is we pay their registration fee. So they can come in and don't have to pay the fee to join the Fringe. We also have 2 trans artist sponsorships this year. We sponsored one of them at PCSC, and then we were fortunate to get an anonymous donor who wanted to also sponsor a trans artist. So we're trying to remove barriers of access for folks, queer folks, newcomers, immigrants, emerging artists, anyone really from marginalized groups can find a welcome space at Fringe.
In the program for Fringe Festival, you recommend that first-time Fringers try a random show. I think that's a brilliant way to jump into this scene, and it shows how much you trust first-time Fringers to get something out of just about any performance they might go to. But I also wanted to ask, what's the glue between these shows this year? What can someone expect to find and get out of a Fringe Festival performance if they chose at random?
That's a great question. I think that what these shows have in common this year, I would say, is risk and vulnerability. There's a lot of personal stories. There's a lot of folks really trying out material for the first time. And so, we tend to be a festival where you can kind of launch and, especially with our touring Fringe artists, they might, if they're doing the BC circuit, they would start here. Then they would go down to Victoria, which runs just after ours closes. I think there's a 3-day space, and then Victoria Fringe runs, and then Vancouver follows that. So there's a little trio of festivals you could do here. So we're a great launching point to try out material. We have such a range this year. From there's dance and stand-up, circus, magic shows, really intense drama, comedy. It feels like we have a little bit of everything this year. So even though people were randomly drawn, we've just got quite a mix of shows. We have returning artist who used to be from Nanaimo that's now living in Toronto, and she's coming back with a colleague now in Wheels and Whoopee. And so we have, shows for families. We have 4 shows, I think, this year for family audiences, which is actually high for us. We usually get 1 or 2, but having 4 is fantastic, so people can bring the whole family out to a selection of shows as well.
Awesome. Yeah, I was looking through the program as well, and I saw this show called Search for the Magic Spatula, and something about that really resonated with me. And I wanted to ask, what are some of the shows you are particularly excited for?
Oh, geez. I try to get to see everything, of course, and I keep looking at Castle of Glass from Victoria. I love how they're described as a theatrical folk rock poem. And I just want to know what that sounds and looks like. And I kind of feel that way about all the shows. When I read the description, I go, there's something in here that intrigues me about each one. So I'm just thrilled to be able to hopefully see them all. Of course, as the producer, I sometimes get pulled to go do other things, but I do endeavor to see every show. Yeah,
I feel like that would be a very difficult thing. And correct me if I'm wrong, are there multiple showings of some of these shows?
Yes. So every group gets 5 shows over the 10 days. So they have a 60-minute slot, and they all take 100% of their box office minus fees for tickets. So going to see the show is putting money directly in these artists' pockets. And then the Fringe, you have to buy a one-time $5 festival button, and those proceeds go to the operation costs of the Fringe Festival. So that's the cut that we take, and that's a one-time purchase. Once you've got your button, you can pay for and go to as many shows as you want. We even have some ancillary events this year, which are free with your Fringe button. Forum Theatre, really popular. You don't want to miss that on August 14 and 15. And then Youth Flame with the famous Mum's the Word Deb Williams with a group of teenagers telling original stories. And that's on August 16th. And those are free events at Black Rabbit. And you can see everything. And it's a great way to plan your Fringe dates.
Awesome. Yeah. I was going to ask, you've partnered with the Black Rabbit this year. And I believe you also mentioned that you have a sort of a satellite show going on in Gabriola. Can you tell us a bit more about? Yeah, how does this expand? How does the new stages expand the access that Nanaimo Fringe Fest can give? So
at Black Rabbit, we last year just had our outdoor stage there. This year we have an outdoor stage, a beer garden, and the attic space as well, where we have some adult-only shows happening up in the attic space. And in fact, we do have our hub there this year where people can come and find out more information, buy T-shirts and beanies. They can buy show tickets there. They can buy raffle tickets. We have an incredible raffle this year with some really amazing prizes. So you can get your raffle tickets at the hub. And that's all going to be centralized at Black Rabbit. So we're really thrilled to be partnering with them. Our longtime partners, the Port Theatre, who run all of our tickets. They are hugely supportive and, of course, have a beautiful theater, which we have 2 other venues at. And yes, new this year, we're partnered with Gabriola Theatre Centre as a satellite venue. So it's running, I think, for 4 days sort of in the middle of the festival. And there are 4 or 5 groups from the Nanaimo Fringe heading over to bring their show also to Gabriola.
That's so awesome. And it gives other people from Nanaimo a chance to hop over to Gabriola and get a great view too.
Exactly. If you miss it here, you can head over there and, tie it in with a visit to Gabriola, which is, of course, a beautiful place to hang out.
Mm-hmm. Fringe Fest is a place for diverse and oppressed groups to challenge paradigms and creates an opportunity for sharing very powerful truths. And among that, there is also trauma and hardship. And you mentioned in the program that some shows have content warnings. Mm-hmm. What's the process of balancing important messages like this and sharing it openly with the public audience when subject matter is heavy and complex?
Well, I think we do try to inform our audiences as much as possible. We have content warnings displayed in the lobbies of the venues. We have indications of content warnings in our festival guide, which you can head to our website to find the specific details of that. We work closely with the artists to help them, decide what the language should be around their content warnings. So they really have, ownership over it, and we work with them in that way. Everything might not be for each person, but we have 12 different choices plus some of our ancillary events. So even if you don't make it to everything, there's a great selection for you to still see lots of shows.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Tamara. This was a great interview, and I can't wait to get this on the air so that people can hear more about the amazing Fringe Fest that's coming up.
Thanks so much, Jack. I appreciate your time and the promotion for the festival.
Midcoast Morning is made possible by the Community Radio Fund of Canada's Radio Meters program and listeners like you. Support Midcoast Morning and CHLY's nonprofit newsroom today by becoming a sustaining donor at chly.ca/donate. Local news can't survive without your support. If you're listening to the podcast edition of Midcoast Morning, go and give us a positive review on Apple Podcasts or whatever podcast feed you use. It helps people find us.
Today on the program, we're taking a sneak peek at the upcoming Nanaimo Fringe Festival, a collection of diverse performances selected at random. Our next guest, Miss Divinity Rising, will be performing a burlesque and cabaret show about death in the Black Rabbit's attic for 5 separate shows between August 9th to 17th. Welcome to CHLY Radio Booth, Miss Divinity Rising. You're a burlesque performer with a show in this year's Nanaimo Fringe Festival. You're front and center on the cover of the program, beckoning the audience into Death's Cabaret. Can you tell me a little bit about what this musical journey to the other side is?
Yes, absolutely. So my stage name is Miss Divinity Rising, and I've been doing burlesque and cabaret on and off for about 20 years. I've always tried to challenge myself with the genre. When I first started doing burlesque, I just enjoyed taking my clothes off in public. And over the years, I've tried more and more to just play with the genre and try different things. So for Death's Cabaret, I wanted to tell my own personal story. I work in end-of-life care. I work as a palliative care nurse. And so I wanted to do a show that portrays death in a way that is not scary and depressing and heavy. I mean, there's definitely some sad and heavy components to the show, but overall, I wanted to invite people to think about their own mortality in a way that is more joyful rather than depressing through sort of the art form of burlesque and cabaret. So it's not strictly a burlesque show. However, I would say it's a burlesque and cabaret inspired personal story.
Yes, because when I look at the show's description, I see there's a content warning for mature themes, and the poster is you posing with a skull and a party hat while draped in a big white sheet. This imagery is very intriguing and powerful, but it makes me wonder, what should an audience member like myself expect when coming to this show?
So I actually chose that image. It's based on a painting by Roberto Fieri, who's an Italian painter. And the original painting is a woman lying on the floor embracing a skeleton. And when I saw that image, it made me think of the contemplation of death. In many spiritual traditions, people are told to contemplate the end of life and to contemplate the life after or the hereafter, because thinking about death and thinking about what happens to you after you die really influences the way that you live your life. I believe that thinking about our own mortality and the legacy that we want to leave in this world after we are gone can allow us to live our lives in a much richer and more meaningful way.
So you're definitely inviting people for a more contemplative and like connecting experience and trying to sort of immerse themselves in these ideas.
Absolutely. So one of the reasons I was inspired to work in end-of-life care is because about 7 years ago, my father died quite suddenly of cancer. And up until that time, I had never had experience with somebody close to me dying. I am a first-generation Canadian. Most of my family lives in Africa. And so when they passed away, like, for example, when my grandparents passed away, I didn't really know them. I didn't have a very strong relationship with them. And so it didn't make a huge difference in my life. But when my father died, it was the first time in my life that somebody who was very influential, who had always been there, was suddenly gone. It had a huge impact on me, and it made me re-examine my life, what I was doing with my life, what my values were, and what kind of legacy I wanted to leave in the world after I was gone. My father worked in healthcare. He actually was working in palliative care before he passed away. He really wanted to help people to have the best quality of life before they passed away. And after he died, I decided that I wanted to do the same thing. And so I went back to school at the age of 36, and now I get to help people die with dignity.
Aw, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for sharing it on stage and using your skills that you've gained in performance to do so. Can you tell me a bit more about, like, what's that career? You said you were 20 years in burlesque performing. What does that career look like?
Well, I'm not sure how much I actually want to say.
Oh, fair enough.
I guess what I'll say is, I come from a Muslim family. And so I was raised with certain ideas about sexuality and how it is and isn't appropriate to express one's sexuality. And so, I talk about this in my show, like a lot of the values that I grew up with as a young woman, they just didn't really feel right to me. They didn't fit my own personal values and sort of like the type of person that I am. I'm quite a outgoing person. I'm a very showy person. I love to be on stage. And so for me, burlesque was initially a rebellion, both against my family and against society at large. I was challenging a lot of the values that I grew up with, and also a lot of the hypocrisy that we have in Western culture as well around women's bodies and women's sexuality. And like I said, over the years, I've wanted to play with the genre to see how much I can do with burlesque. So originally, it was just for me striptease. And over the years, I've started to incorporate more and more singing and dancing and storytelling. So this one-woman show was the first time where I'm really incorporating storytelling and my own personal narrative into a sort of burlesque-inspired show. But I feel like I've been sort of working up to this over the last several years.
Yeah, so it sounds like this show is while inspired by burlesque, is very much your own story and your own creation. How would you say this compares to the modern style of what burlesque is and then what that scene looks like?
Yeah, so I've seen a lot of changes in burlesque over the last 20 years. When I first started doing burlesque, like I said, it was mainly just striptease. It was people, generally women, generally white women, just looking pretty on stage while removing beautiful costumes. And I think, as the genre has evolved over the last 20 years, I think it's become a lot more political. I think there's a lot more people who are bringing their own perspective to it. So, for example, there's more non-binary people, there's more people of color. People are incorporating their own sort of like their own cultural backgrounds into burlesque. So, for example, in this show, I talk a little bit about sort of my Indian background, and I talk about Indian mythology. So I'm bringing some of my own sort of ancestral background into the work that I'm doing.
Yeah, you say that there's this combination of Indian mythology into the cabaret song and dance style. What's involved in the process of infusing and commingling these cultural influences for you?
I think for people who don't know me, it can be a little confusing to see me incorporating all of these different elements. But really what I've tried to do is I'm trying to take different elements of who I am and representing them. And it may seem contradictory at times, but I think that I, as a person, am contradictory. There are very many elements of who I am that are contradictory. And I've spent a lifetime trying to sort of bring harmony amongst these very contradictory parts of myself, which I think is common for immigrant people growing up, the first generation immigrants growing up in this country is, we bring our family's cultures here, but then we're also trying to make sense of a culture in the West. So for me, burlesque, represents, I guess, the culture that I gravitated to after I left my family. And then I'm also bringing in sort of like the Indian mythology, looking back at where I've come from and what sort of ideas have influenced me.
Have your ideas about how to use these art forms changed over time?
Yes. Like I said, I think when I first started doing burlesque, I just wanted to look cute on stage. I wasn't necessarily, I didn't necessarily know how to tell a story. And as I've gotten older and I've worked more and more with the art form, I really want to leave the audience with an idea, and not just an idea, not just any idea, but like a really juicy idea that you can sink your teeth into, an idea that's going to carry you forward in your life. And I really hope that I've done this with Death's Cabaret. I really hope that people walk away from this performance feeling like they have something that they can chew on.
Your show got selected for Fringe Fest. They do a random lottery, and you got picked up for that show, and you'd put in to get into the lottery, and then you got selected, and now you're embarking on this series of shows. You're going to be at the Black Rabbit's attic. You're preparing, you're rehearsing. Tell me, what else is involved in preparing for a show like this? The Fringe Festival has been super supportive. I will say this. They've helped me a lot with marketing and with finding the venue. But, as an artist putting on a Fringe Festival show, like, we tend to be small, independent groups or artists. Like, for example, for my show, like, I am the writer, director, producer, performer, main marketing person. Like, I am doing it all. And it is, it's a lot of work. Oh, I'm costumer as well, which is definitely not something that I'm amazing at. And on top of all of that, around the same time that I found out that I was doing the Fringe Festival, I also found out that I was pregnant. And having never been pregnant before, I thought, oh, well, no big deal. I'll just continue along. And let me tell you, it has been a big deal. Making a human is a lot of work. And so on top of just trying to wear every single hat and do all of the things to put this show on, I have also been just dealing with a first-time pregnancy, which has been, to be honest, I've been quite tired, quite overwhelmed, quite sick. So I I had a certain vision for this show when I first started, and I've had to sort of allow myself to pull things back, to do a more stripped down version of a show, which I think is fine, honestly. I think the script that I have written is a really good script. I think the story that I'm telling is a really good story, but I also would love the opportunity in future
to be able to like rework this show and like add to the costumes and add to the song and dance numbers, because realistically this time around, me being chief cook and bottle washer and pregnant, it's been really challenging.
I see. I often find in my own life as a creative that stripping back process really does give you the best of your work. And it's like, it's so hard to get rid of the parts that you end up having to take away. But have you found that process like reinvigorating in a way too?
You know, every time I read my script or go through it, I am just taken aback by, again, just what a great story it is and how the message is, I believe, a message that needs to be shared with the world. And so even though I'm pregnant, even though it's been difficult to produce this show, I'm just really proud and really happy with what I have created. And I really, really hope that people will come out and will watch it. Because like I said, I think it's an important message.
Yeah, it's a message about death, but you're also at the same time embodying a message about life.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, yes, it is Death's Cabaret, but ultimately it is about life. It's about the life that you choose to live when you realize that life is temporary.
Mm-hmm. So outside of the Fringe Festival, where can people experience your work? Do you have any other projects on the go?
Yes, absolutely. So I am actually doing a performance with the Sultry Sirens at the Terminal at the end of September. I believe it's September 21st. If you go to my Instagram, which is Miss Divinity Rising at Instagram.com, I think there's dots between Miss Divinity and Rising. So Miss Divinity Rising at Instagram, you can actually see a link or a poster for the show that we have in September. It's Sultry Sirens. It's local artists. We're a great little group, usually sell out our shows. Please come check it out at the Terminal.
Thank you so much, Miss Divinity Rising. That's all we have for today.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me on the show today.
For more information on Nanaimo Fringe Festival, visit nanaimofringe.com. That's our show for the day. Thank you for joining me. I'm Jack Corfield, temporary host and producer of Midcoast Morning. Jesse Woodward is our executive producer, and Arby Frew is our technical advisor. You can sign up for CHLY's newsletter at chly.ca/subscribe for updates from our nonprofit newsroom. Our theme song is First One by local Nanaimo band Waste Management. If you have a story you'd like us to cover, email us at news@chly.ca.
Midcoast Morning would not be possible without the funding of the Community Radio Fund of Canada's Radio Meters program and listeners like you. Midcoast Morning is a project of CHLY's nonprofit newsroom. Support nonprofit journalism in Nanaimo and on the Sailor Sea today by becoming a monthly sustaining donor at $5 or more per month. Support the program at chly.ca/donate. If you're already a supporter, record a voice memo telling others where you're listening from and why they too should support our work. After you're done, you can email it to us. Finally, this program acknowledges and gives thanks to the Nanaimo First Nation as we broadcast and podcast from their traditional territory. Thanks for listening.